Hello everyone, I'm Enigmadness, your host for today's exploration into the darkest corners of human history. Today, we'll be delving into the chilling world of serial killers, examining the top 10 most dangerous and notorious individuals to have ever walked the earth. From their gruesome crimes to their psychological profiles, these killers will both shock and intrigue you. So, without further ado, let's dive into the top 10 most dangerous serial killers in history. 1. Pedro Alonzo Lopez. Our first entry takes us to Colombia, where Pedro Alonzo Lopez, infamously known as the Monster of the Andes, prowled the streets during the 1970s. Lopez's reign of terror saw him confess to the rape and murder of over 300 young girls across South America. He preyed on vulnerable victims, often luring them away from crowded areas under false pretenses before subjecting them to unspeakable horrors. Lopez's childhood was marked by abandonment and abuse, setting the stage for his later descent into darkness. After being expelled from his home at the age of 8, Lopez wandered the streets where he was taken in by a pedophile who introduced him to a life of crime and violence. These formative experiences shaped Lopez's twisted psyche and fueled his insatiable appetite for destruction. 2. Gary Ridgeway. Moving to the United States, we encounter Gary Leon Ridgway, better known as the Green River Killer. Ridgway haunted the Pacific Northwest during the 1980s and 1990s, preying on vulnerable women along the streets of Washington state. His gruesome spree of at least 49 murders earned him the title of one of America's most prolific serial killers. Ridgway's troubled upbringing and tumultuous relationships provided fertile ground for his murderous impulses to flourish. Raised in a dysfunctional household marked by abuse and neglect, Ridgway struggled with feelings of inadequacy and a deep-seated resentment towards women. These unresolved issues fueled his violent fantasies and propelled him on a path of destruction. 3. Alexander Pushkin. Venturing into Russia, we meet Alexander Yuryevich Pushkin, the chessboard killer. Pushkin's twisted game of murder unfolded in Moscow's Bitsa Park, where he brutally ended the lives of at least 48 victims. His macabre tally and chilling modus operandi earned him notoriety as one of Russia's most dangerous killers. Pushkin's troubled childhood, marked by abandonment and isolation, laid the groundwork for his descent into madness. Bullied and ostracized by his peers, Pushkin harbored a deep-seated rage that simmered beneath the surface. His obsession with achieving infamy and surpassing the body count of his idol, Andrei Chikatilo, drove him to commit increasingly brutal acts of violence. 4. Richard Ramirez. Our next stop takes us to the streets of Southern California, where Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, unleashed a reign of terror during the mid-1980s. Ramirez's rampage of murder, rape, and burglary instilled fear in communities as he prowled the night, leaving a trail of mutilation and satanic symbols in his wake. Ramirez's troubled upbringing and fascination with violent imagery laid the foundation for his descent into depravity. Exposed to graphic scenes of violence at an early age, Ramirez developed a morbid curiosity that would later manifest in his sadistic acts. His fixation on satanism and the occult further fueled his descent into darkness, providing a twisted justification for his heinous crimes.
Contribute to a person, to a person's frustration and anger, and at some point in life, he explodes.
Why on earth would you have hurt those people? Why did you kill those people?
No comments. No comments. I cannot answer that at this time.
5. Dennis Rader. Returning to the heartland of America, we encounter Dennis Lynn Rader, infamously known as the BTK Killer. Rader's methodical approach to murder earned him the chilling moniker, bind, torture, kill. Over the span of several decades, Rader terrorized the Wichita, Kansas area, leaving a legacy of fear and death. Rader's outwardly normal facade masked a deeply disturbed psyche, shaped by a childhood marked by cruelty and dysfunction. Raised in a strict and authoritarian household, Rader struggled to connect with others and harbored a deep-seated resentment towards women. His meticulously planned murders and taunting letters to the media and police reflected his desire for control and notoriety.
Somewhere between 7 and 7:30.
This particular location, did you know these people?
No, that's no, that was part of my, I guess my what you call fantasy. These people were selected.
All right, so you
Okay.
you were engaged in some kind of fantasy during this period of time?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, when you use the term fantasy, is this something you were doing for your personal pleasure?
Sexual fantasy, sir.
I see.
6. Ted Bundy. Our next entry takes us into the twisted mind of Theodore Robert Bundy, one of America's most notorious serial killers. Operating during the 1970s, Bundy embarked on a cross-country killing spree that left a trail of devastation in its wake. His charming demeanor and intelligence allowed him to lure unsuspecting victims to their deaths, earning him the moniker of the Lady Killer. Bundy's childhood was shrouded in mystery, with conflicting accounts of his upbringing. While he appeared to be a charming and well-adjusted young man, Bundy harbored dark and violent fantasies beneath the surface. His inability to form meaningful relationships and a deep-seated resentment towards women fueled his murderous impulses, leading to a reign of terror that spanned multiple states.
Some guy hanging out at bars or a bum. I wasn't a pervert in the sense that, people look at somebody and say, I know there's something wrong with them, and just tell. I mean, I was essentially a normal person. I had good friends. I led a normal life, except for this one small but very potent and very destructive segment of it that I kept very secret, very close to myself, and didn't let anybody know about it. And part of the shock and horror for my dear friends and family years ago when I was first arrested was that there was no clue. They looked at me and they looked at the all-American boy. And it happened in stages, gradually. It doesn't necessarily, not to me at least, happen overnight. My experience with, I say pornography generally, but with pornography that deals on a violent level with the sexuality, is that once you become addicted to it, and I look at this as a kind of addiction, like an addiction, you keep craving something which is harder, something which gives you a greater sense of excitement, until you reach the point where the pornography only goes so far. You reach that jumping off point where you begin to wonder if maybe actually doing it will give you that which is beyond just reading about it or looking at it. Listen, I'm no social scientist, and I haven't done a survey. I mean, I don't pretend that I know what John Q. Citizen thinks about this. But I've lived in prison for a long time now. And I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence just like me. And without exception, every one of them was deeply involved in pornography, without question, without exception, deeply influenced and consumed by an addiction to pornography. There's no question about it. The FBI's own study.
7. Andrei Chikatilo. Turning our gaze to Russia once again, we encounter Andrei Romanovich Chikatilo, also known as the Butcher of Rostov or the Red Ripper. Chikatilo's gruesome killing spree unfolded over a span of 12 years, during which he claimed the lives of at least 52 victims, mostly children and young women. His barbaric acts of violence shocked the nation and earned him a place among the most infamous serial killers in history. Chikatilo's troubled childhood, marked by famine and the horrors of World War II, scarred him deeply and laid the groundwork for his later descent into madness. As an adult, he struggled with impotence and feelings of inadequacy, which fueled his violent sexual fantasies. His gruesome acts of mutilation and cannibalism were driven by a twisted desire for power and control over his victims. 8. John Wayne Gacy. Traveling back to the United States, we encounter John Wayne Gacy Jr., better known as the Killer Clown. Gacy's facade as a pillar of the community concealed a dark and sinister secret. He was responsible for the brutal murders of at least 33 young men and boys. Operating out of his suburban Chicago home, Gacy lured his victims under the guise of offering them employment before subjecting them to unspeakable horrors. Gacy's troubled upbringing and tumultuous relationship with his father contributed to his warped view of the world and his victims. As a young man, he was plagued by feelings of inadequacy and a desire for validation, which he sought through his alter ego as Pogo the Clown. His ability to blend into society and manipulate those around him allowed him to evade capture for years, leaving a trail of devastation in his wake.
A lot of things that I've forgotten that I can't remember. For instance, I can go back to my childhood and stuff and I still remember that, but yet I can go into the 70s and there are a lot of things I can't remember. The same thing with the victims. I've looked at all of, I don't know if you notice here, we got pictures of every one of the victims here. And believe it or not, for the last 12 years, I've studied these photos of the victims.
9. Jeffrey Dahmer. Our next entry takes us into the depraved mind of Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer, one of America's most infamous serial killers. Operating during the late 20th century, Dahmer's reign of terror saw him brutally murder and dismember at least 17 young men and boys. His gruesome acts of violence shocked the nation and earned him the chilling moniker of the Milwaukee Cannibal. Dahmer's troubled childhood and early fascination with death and dissection laid the groundwork for his descent into madness. Raised in a dysfunctional household marked by divorce and neglect, Dahmer struggled with feelings of isolation and a desire for control over his victims. His twisted fantasies of domination and cannibalism fueled his murderous impulses, leading to a spree of violence that shocked the world.
Already prepared. Person would drink it, fall asleep, and that's when they would be strangled.
Do you still feel those same urges? Do you still feel that compulsion, that obsession?
I wish I could say that it just left completely, but no, there are times when I still do have the old compulsions.
10. Aileen Waros. Our final entry introduces us to Aileen Carol Waros, one of America's most notorious female serial killers. Operating during the late 20th century, Waros embarked on a killing spree that claimed the lives of at least 7 men in Florida. Her troubled past and tumultuous relationships fueled her violent rampage, earning her the chilling moniker of the Damsel of Death. Warnos's childhood was marked by abandonment, abuse, and trauma, setting the stage for her later descent into darkness. Forced into prostitution at a young age, she endured a life of hardship and exploitation, which left deep emotional scars. Her acts of violence were driven by a desire for revenge against the men who had exploited and abused her, leading to a reign of terror that captivated the nation.
You know, I was just wondering how you're going to be, at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Are you prepared?
I'm prepared. I'm all right. I'm all right with it.
Thank you for joining me on this chilling journey through the lives of some of the most notorious serial killers in history. If you found this video informative, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more intriguing content. Their heinous crimes have left a lasting impact on society, serving as a stark reminder of the darkness that can lurk within the human psyche. As we reflect on these disturbing tales, may we also remember the victims and their families, and may their stories serve as a call for vigilance against evil in all its forms. Until next time, stay safe, and may you never encounter the horrors that these individuals brought into the world. This is Enigmadness, your narrator in this history, signing off.